Hello and welcome to the screencast. Today we will discuss how the thin pool monitoring and reporting capabilities of Veritas Operations Manager help you perform targeted thin reclamation. Virtualization has led to exploding storage needs, and that has been one of the key drivers in boosting the adoption of thin provisioning. While thin provisioning helps customers delay or eliminate their storage purchase, the challenge many administrators often face is ensuring that their thin storage remains thin. The key to doing this effectively is to ensure that as the application deletes the data that is no longer needed, the deleted blocks are returned to the thin pool. While many array vendors provide an API to reclaim deleted blocks, they are not the most efficient at this. This is because they do not know exactly which blocks to reclaim. As reclamation tends to be resource intensive, administrators are often conservative in using reclamation. Also, not knowing exactly how much space to be reclaimed, administrators don't have the incentive to run reclamation. This is where thin reclamation capabilities built into Storage Foundation differentiate themselves from the crowd. Using file system and volume level intelligence, Storage Foundation can talk to the array and tell it exactly which blocks to reclaim, thus making the reclamation process extremely efficient. Veritas Operations Manager extends the thin reclamation capabilities of Storage Foundation by providing you reports around exactly how much space you can reclaim at the enclosure, thin pool, host, and file system level. This helps you better plan and target thin reclamation. Before we look at the reclamation recommendation reports, let's quickly go through the support for thin pools in WOM. Using the thin pool usage report in WOM, you can figure out which thin pools are at risk by finding the thin pools with the highest level of subscribed and consumed capacity. Then, to ensure that the thin pools do not exceed certain thresholds, you can track them, and you can do this by setting the threshold levels for consumption and subscription of the thin pools. Finally, WOM has a thin reclamation setup wizard to allow you to set up and schedule reclamation. However, before you set up reclamation, you would need to know which objects are the best candidates for reclamation. So now let's look at the reports in WOM that give you that information. The thin reclamation recommendation reports are available under the Storage Reclamation section in the Reports area of WOM. Let's first look at the thin reclamation recommendation reports at the thin pool level. The graph on the right shows the top 10 enclosures that have the most amount of space available for reclamation. Here I have an EMC array with about 119 gigabytes of storage available for reclamation. That data is then broken down at the thin pool level. The chart on the left shows thin pools across all the arrays in your environment that have the highest amount of space available for reclamation. To get a further breakdown of the chart, let's look at this information from a host perspective. The chart on the left shows the top 10 hosts that will benefit from reclamation. In my test system, I have 3 hosts here. And the data is then further broken down at the file system level, where we have a graph that shows the top 10 file systems that will benefit from reclamation. So as you see, the amount of space that is available for reclamation is shown right at the enclosure level down to the file system level. So based on your requirements, you can tailor the set of objects where you want to limit your reclamation to. So to summarize, you can leverage WOM and the underlying Storage Foundation thin reclamation capabilities to enable targeted replication with a very simple 3-step approach. First, using the thin pool consumption reports in WOM, you identify the thin pools at risk. Next, you can track the risky thin pools by setting alerts on the consumption and subscription levels of these thin pools. And lastly, you can find the thin pools that have the most reclaimable space available and run reclamation reports to target the file systems, hosts, thin pools, or enclosures. This brings us to the end of the screencast. To learn more or download, visit go.symantec.com/WOM or go.symantec.com/WOM advanced. Thank you.